Hello there, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. And I do like to answer questions from viewers from time to time to help you on your own journeys to Chap Nirvana. And today I'm going to answer a question on the exciting topic of wristwatches because I've received a question from a viewer called Bark Buffalo. And he says, I am debating between a Submariner No Date and an Explorer 1 currently, and will probably be my only watch for a long time. Having owned both, could you give some thoughts on a comparison between the two? Thanks, keep up the good content. Well, thank you, Bark, for your kind words. I enjoy supporting people with questions and answers if I possibly can. Now, the question upon how to begin your journey into the Rolex world is a challenging one, and many people may find themselves at the same point as Bark as here. He's thinking about two of their more iconic watches, which are towards the entry level of their professional range. The mighty Submariner and the iconic little Explorer. And for good reason, why people often find themselves thinking about these two watches, because although they look very different, they have both got striking similarities. For the most part, they're stainless steel, although they are available in other options of gold and two-tone. But today we're looking at stainless steel watches, and they are a very simple watch. They are very utilitarian. They do one thing alone: tell the time, because both of the watches we're looking at today have no other complications. There's no dates, there's no GMTs. Both of these watches are three-handers, and they do one thing well: they tell us the time. But they do it in a unique way, with each having its own personality. They're very, very different. And I think the best way to look at these two watches is to look at them individually. Okay, let's look at that Explorer 1 to begin with. Now, this is a watch which has been in the Rolex collection since the early 1950s, and Rolex are very quick to tell us that this watch is associated with the first ascent of Everest. They market this watch as being on the wrist of Sherpa Tenzing Norgay. In essence, actually, it wasn't really an Explorer. It was one of the prototype watches which later became an Explorer. But this watch, since that time, has been synonymous with adventure and the outdoors, and it is truly a professional range watch. Now, professional range is what Rolex calls its utility watches, its tool watches, watches which have a function and which are generally quite robust and tough. Now, you need to know with the Explorer, it's relatively small. It's 36 millimeters in diameter, which makes it somewhat smaller than most of its much bigger friends in the professional range. And I'm going to get my mobile phone here, and we're going to have a look at the watch close up. And we can have a look at it in a bit more proximity. So, here we go. Here is my little Explorer, 36 millimeters, and as you can see, a very simple dial. It is just the hour, the minute and the second hand in the middle. It's a black dial, and as you can see, we've got baton markers for the hours, an inverted triangle at 12 o'clock, and 3, 6 and 9 indicating the cardinal points on the dial. Very simple, very straightforward. The hour markers are all made of white gold, and they're filled with luminescence. Other than that, the watch itself is simple. Stainless steel oyster bracelet. It's got the professional range clasp, as you can see. It's got an easy link in that clasp, which allows it to be extended by an extra 5 millimeters for a bit of comfort. And on the side there, you can see the crown with the famous Rolex coronet on it. That is a screw-down crown, which gives us 100 meters of water resistant. A classic, simple, yet very elegant watch. Now, what makes the Explorer quite popular, I think, across the Rolex range is the fact that it is rather simple looking. It's nothing fancy. There's no bezel on there filled with any Cerachrome or any colour to it. It's white hour markers, in essence, on a black background. It's easy to read, it's easy to see. It's a simple stainless steel bracelet. And this makes it very flexible for the wearer, because you can wear this easily with a suit, you can wear it easily with casual clothing, and you can wear it with your swim trunks, because, you know, being 100 meters of water resistant it's quite capable of going in the sea with you on holiday, going in the pool, doing anything you want. This is Rolex's famous field watch. It's a watch which is at home in the boardroom or on an expedition at the Amazon, and in either situation it will perform admirably, it will look smart, and it is also quite attractive. Now, one of the things people like about this watch, it's not fancy in any way. You know, it doesn't draw attention to itself. So if you're somebody who perhaps steers away from the Rolex brand because of its association of being a little bit showy, a little bit blingy, this is a watch which I think most people would not even recognize as a Rolex at all on your wrist. So if you're somebody who likes the stealthy side of being stylish, the Explorer might be the piece for you. So, moving to a totally different model in appearance, but still fulfilling the same function, it's the mighty Rolex Submariner. And I use the term mighty Rolex Submariner because this is the poster boy of the Rolex collection. Because, you know, for time immemorial, since this watch came around in the mid-1950s, I think it's just a year or so younger than the Explorer, this watch has been really the watch which people think of when they think of the Rolex brand. It has been the design which has launched 1,000 other look-alike dive watches. Yet, this is the original. This is where it all began. And again, it's relatively simple. This is the no-date version. Let me get my phone again, and we will have a look what this one's all about. So, here we go. This is the Rolex Submariner. Now, this is a 40mm Rolex Submariner. The current model is 41mm, so it's a shade larger. And as you can see, simple as anything. Yet again, black dial, big white hour markers, and it's got a Mercedes hand, same as the Explorer, marking the hours, a simple sword hand marking the minutes, and that second hand ticking along. Those hour markers are filled with luminescence, so it's easily read at night. Now, where this watch differs is it has the bezel, and the bezel, as you can see here, moving ever so slightly, is filled with a material called Cerachrome, which is showing a bit of a reflection today, but it is a ceramic material which will never fade, it will never scratch, it will keep the watch looking sharp and dandy just the way as it does now. It has got, again, that oyster bracelet, stainless steel, and again, it's got the professional clasp, but this time a much larger clasp, as you can see, because inside there is the Easy Glide or Glide Lock bracelet, which allows us to alter the size of the bracelet on the go by 2mm increments without requiring any tools whatsoever. So very, very capable adjustability on that bracelet. And on the side of the watch, as you can see, that famous Rolex crown, that indicates another screw down crown, and this watch is water resistant. If I can just try avoid some of the glare, water resistant to 300 meters or 1,000 feet. So there we are. That is the Submariner, a watch which I think has a huge reputation in many people's minds, and for all sorts of reasons. I mean, for me, myself, when I think of the Submariner, one of the things which always springs to my thoughts is James Bond. Because in my early days, growing up with Sean Connery and Roger Moore as James Bond, I remember the Submariner being on the wrist of 007. It was the famous magnetic watch which Roger Moore used in Live and Let Die, for instance. And, you know, it's always been etched for me as the watch of the world's most famous secret agent. Very capable, very cool as well, because Bond, of course, with Sean Connery's character, famously wore a Submariner with a white tuxedo. And it sort of allowed the Submariner to be worn in situations where perhaps a tool watch, a dive watch, had never previously been. And as a result, there's a lot more flexibility with wearing this watch. But the Sub, for me, is iconic. It's much larger than the Explorer, and it doesn't share its flexibility, because in reality, it doesn't really go well with formal attire. I don't think dive watches are meant to be worn formally, for sure. So a slightly different aesthetic, but in the modern era where people seem to favour sports watch more, definitely it's cut its own path. Now, the one problem with Rolexes is their difficulty in achieving them and their cost, of course. And these are not inexpensive, I have to tell you. The Explorer, quite a small 36mm stainless steel watch, currently sells, at the time of filming this anyway, £6,100. And the Submariner, £7,700. And I remind you, stainless steel, no complications on these watches, time only. So it's a lot of money for what you actually get in your hand. If you can get them, that's the problem. These watches are very heavily sought after, and as a consequence, as the rules of supply and demand dictate, they're very difficult to get your hands on. The Explorer is by far the easier of the two if you were to try and track one down. But even so, you probably have to wait a number of months, maybe longer, to get one of these into your collection if you go to an authorised dealer and try and source one in the normal way. If you go into the grey market and try and buy one second hand, it might be a little easier, but you'd have to pay a premium for it. The Submariner, on the other hand, benefits from the fact that it's one of the more iconic watches in the Rolex range. It's one of the big three, up there with the GMT Master and the Daytona. It's quite hard to get. Even though these are probably produced in relatively high numbers, so many people want them, it's difficult to track one down. Certainly, if you go into an authorised dealer and you just want to pay retail price for it, you're likely to wait a considerable period of time. It could be, in excess of 12 months, 2 years or beyond. I've heard of people being quoted 5-year waiting lists just to buy Rolex's entry-level dive watch. So much more difficult to achieve, very expensive watches for what they are. Okay, to round up, Bark asked me a question directly, didn't he? He said, which one would be my recommendation? So I've got to make a choice. But it's almost impossible, because as ever, when you're choosing something based on its appearance, on its aesthetics, it's down to your personal taste and where it's going to fit into your life. Because if you are a sporty individual, you're never wearing formal clothing, you're maybe getting in the water quite often, maybe you get wet on a regular basis, maybe you just want a watch which is tough and rugged and looks like a dive watch, it's going to be a no-brainer. It's going to be the Submariner. However, if you want something a bit more flexible, and today you're wearing a suit, tomorrow you're dressed as I am now, casual, maybe the day after that you're going to the beach or the pool, the good old Explorer may be a better choice all round. If it's my money, what would I have? It's going to be the Explorer, because for me, flexibility is king. Versatility is something I want in my watch. Now, Bark said it's likely to be the only watch he has for some time. If I was buying one watch which is universally wearable, which is flexible, versatile, can be worn in different situations, yet is rough and rugged, which can be worn on an expedition up Everest, in the Amazon, on the beach or in the boardroom. Only one of these two watches really scratches that itch. It's the Explorer, the iconic, the beautiful, the classically elegant, the ultimately wearable Explorer 1. That's my decision. That's what I would have. Only my opinion. I know all of you gents out there now who own Submariners are screaming at the screen saying, what a load of tosh. Everybody knows Submariner is the best. Well, as I said, it's personal taste. I'm wearing my Submariner today because I'm in a really casual situation and I want a nice larger watch on my wrist. But tomorrow I'm going to be wearing a blazer and tie. This doesn't cut it. The Explorer is the chap. So there we go, folks. I hope you've enjoyed that response to the question from Bark. If you have, give the video a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more like this, click the red button and subscribe. If you would like to practically support the channel, you can do that in a number of ways. You can buy me a coffee, or you can even join me as a patron, because I've opened a Patreon account where I add additional exclusive content for the use of my patrons. And if you want to see what that is, you can follow the links in the show notes below to find out what we get up to over there. So until the next time, wear the watch which is right for you, with style and panache, and you won't go wrong at all. Until the next time, take care, and I will see you again very soon.